Welcome back for another video, guys. I'm Sarah with Rusty Dog & Co. And well, if you're new here, then you're right smack dab in the middle of a pretty big kitchen remodel series that I've been tackling. But let me catch you up on what I've been up to over the last couple of videos. Basically, I just went in and completely gutted my in-laws' kitchen. We pretty much ripped out everything. We put up a new tongue and groove ceiling, which I have to say looks awesome. We added some LED recessed lighting. I put down a new LVP floor, and in the last video, I started the process of making custom kitchen cabinets from scratch. So I got all of the cabinet boxes as well as the face frames assembled in the last video. That means that in this video, we are going to tackle making the shaker style cabinet doors for this kitchen. Now, these shaker style cabinet doors are simple yet classic, but making a bunch of them can be a little bit challenging if you don't have a good plan in place. Don't worry, guys, I'm gonna show you exactly how I make mine, and I'll even share a few tricks along the way. All right, let's get started. So I think a great place to start for this video would be to just explain what a shaker style cabinet door is to those who might be less familiar with that term. So when you hear the term shaker style, it essentially means that the cabinet door is comprised of 5 parts. You have 2 stile pieces, and these are the vertical pieces that you see on the left and the right. You also have 2 rail pieces, and these are the horizontal pieces on the top and bottom. And finally, you have 1 center panel piece in the middle. This creates a clean framed look that feels timeless and versatile. This type of door has crisp, simple lines and minimal ornamentation, which is true to the shaker design philosophy of simplicity and function over decoration. So now that you know what a shaker style cabinet door is, let's talk about the tricky part, figuring out the exact dimensions for each part of the door so that everything lines up cleanly once assembled. Let's say you already know the finished size of the door. For example, maybe it's going to be 18 inches tall by 14 inches wide. That's your overall outside dimension, including the frame. And you figure this out by measuring the opening of your cabinet box or face frame and then added however much overhang you want depending on the type of cabinet door hinges you're using. Some hinges have a 1/2 inch overlay. The ones I'm using are 1 1/4 inch overlay, and that just means that my cabinet doors are going to extend past my cabinet opening on the sides by 1 1/4 inches. Now for the height, I just try to make the overlay the same as the sides, but you can adjust this measurement a little bit if you need a tighter gap. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm just discussing overlay cabinet doors. If your cabinet doors need to be inset, then that's a whole other process for getting those measurements figured out, so I'm not going to cover that in this video. Now it's time to figure out what measurement our individual door parts need to be. Let's start with the stile pieces first. As a reminder, the stiles are the 2 vertical pieces on the left and right sides. They always run the full height of the door. So in this example, both stile pieces are 18 inches long because that's the total height of our door. Now the width of each stile is usually between 2 1/4 inches to 2 1/2 inches depending on the look you want. The rails are the horizontal pieces at the top and bottom of the door, and they are a tad bit more complicated to figure out. Their length has to account for the stiles since those stiles are part of the total width. Now here's the formula you need to know. Your rail length is going to be equal to the door width minus 2 times your stile width plus 2 times your tongue length. For example, if your door is 14 inches wide, your stiles are 2 1/2 inches each, and your rails have 3/8 inch tongues that fit into the stiles. So you'd calculate 14 minus 2 times 2.5 plus 2 times 0.375 or 3/8 inches, and that'll give you 9.75 inches. What I started doing is just shaving about a 1/16 of an inch from whatever measurement I ended up with. So in this case, 9.75 inches. I take a little bit off of that so that I don't run into any issues come assembly time. Now lastly, the center panel fits into the grooves inside the rails and stiles, usually about 3/8 inch deep on each side. Here's the formula for that. Your panel width is equal to the door width minus 2 times the stile width plus 2 times the groove depth. If we use the same example, then we have 14 minus 2 times 2.5 plus 2 times 0.375, which gives us 9 13.75 inches wide. So that will be the width of the center panel. Your panel height is equal to the door height minus 2 times the rail width plus 2 times the groove depth. For the height, we would do 18 minus 2 times 2.5 plus 2 times 0.375, which will give us 13.75 inches. And that'll be the height of our center panel. Now, just like before, I usually like to take a little bit off of both the width and the height of the center panel so that it can expand and contract freely inside those 3/8-inch grooves. Once you understand how those dimensions relate to each other, it's really just a simple system. 2 verticals, 2 horizontals, and 1 panel in the middle. And the best part is you can scale it up or down for any cabinet in your kitchen or your shop. Okay, now that I've explained how to figure out all of the dimensions for these shaker style cabinet doors, let's get to the shop and start cutting up all of our pieces. Now I'm going to construct these cabinet doors out of some poplar and MDF. Now I'm choosing to use the poplar for the stile and rail pieces, and I like to use poplar here because it's a pretty nice durable wood. It does take paint really well, and since these cabinets are getting painted, that'll be really helpful. And it's not quite as expensive as maple, so there's a little bit of cost savings there for using this poplar wood. Now for the center panel pieces, I plan on using some of this 1/2-inch MDF board, and the reason for that is that this stuff is just super stable. It also paints really well, and so that's going to just make my door nice and sturdy and stable and hopefully last for a really long time. So those are gonna basically make up the components of the door. The plan for today is just to get to work on ripping all of my stile and rail pieces first. I've already kind of cut down my plywood into smaller sections. I'll get these center panel pieces cut to their exact size as well. I'm gonna start just ripping down this poplar board to 2¼ inches. That's going to be the width for all of my stile and rails. And it's probably gonna take me a little bit of time because there are quite a few pieces for all of these cabinet doors. Now, what I did to sort of help me along with this process is I just went on my computer and I created a very simple formula where I could take my overall door dimensions and I could plug that into my formula, and then it would auto-generate all of the dimensions that I need for my stiles, for my rails, for my center panel pieces. And sometimes those can be tough to keep straight because you have to allot for, you know, your grooves and your tongues, and there's a lot of calculations there that you just kind of have to keep straight. So I have sped that process up a little bit with that formula. I've just inputted all of my door dimensions in here, and then it's auto-generated all of those other dimensions that I need. And then I just printed my spreadsheet off and I've highlighted exactly what I need to cut for my stiles and rails and my center panel pieces. And then the plan for today is just to follow along this spreadsheet and work on getting all of these pieces cut to size. That way, once they're cut to size, we can start working over on the router table, cutting all those tongues and grooves. So that's my plan for today. So let's get to work on putting these cabinet doors together. Just like with the face frames I constructed in my last video, I'm using S3S lumber here, which means that it's surfaced on 3 sides. It's already been planed down to the proper thickness and has one straight edge that I can run up against the fence of my table saw. This saves me a lot of time on a project this big because I don't have to mill each individual board. With all of my stile and rail pieces cut to size, it's time to head over to the router table and cut our tongues and grooves for each piece. And to do that, I'm going to be using these 15-degree stile and rail bits from Whiteside. Now, I did actually purchase these bits specifically for this project because I knew I had so many doors to make and I wanted to go with a higher quality router bit. And I have to say that these bits did an excellent job. Now, this set comes with 2 bits, one for cutting all of the grooves in the rail and stile pieces, and one that will cut out the tongues in your rail pieces that'll fit into the grooves. What I like about these bits is that they also cut a 15-degree chamfer on the front of all of the pieces, which I think just adds a little extra design detail. Now, Whiteside makes several different varieties of their cope and stick router bits, but if you want to check out these specifically, then I'll leave a link to them for you guys. So we're going to start by cutting out the tongues in all of our rail pieces. And to be honest, this can get a little sketchy. The only reason I feel comfortable enough to do this step is because of this coping sled that I purchased from Rockler years ago. It does a good job of locking the piece down for you as you run the end through the router table so that you don't get kickback. Now, if you're going to tackle something like this, I would highly suggest purchasing a coping sled or making some sort of jig to make running these pieces through a little safer for you. Now, I'm not going to cover exactly how to set these router bits up in this video, mainly due to time, but I do have another video on my channel where I go into a little more depth about all of that, so I'll leave a link to that video for you guys to reference if you need to. With all of the tongues cut in my rail pieces, I can now swap out bits and install the bit that will cut the grooves for every piece. I use a rail piece that I just cut to line up the cutter head of the bit perfectly with the tongue. Then I just run my stile and rail pieces through on one side to get the grooves that I will need. Now this bit is also adding that 15-degree chamfer as well, so it's important to make sure that whatever side will be the front of your door is facing down for each piece. After a while, I had all of the rail and stile pieces run through the router table and I could move on to the center panels. That meant first getting them cut to their final size on the table saw. Then it was back over to the router table to cut a rabbet on each side of the panel. Now this MDF is 1/2 inch, but I will need a 1/4 inch tongue to fit into my grooves that I cut out, so I'm using a rabbeting bit to create that 1/4 inch tongue for all of these center panels. I also like to dry fit every cabinet door before I add glue. Now, is this time consuming? Totally, but it's a lot easier to fix things if necessary before wood glue is involved. Now it's time to glue these doors together, but before I do that, I like to take a little sandpaper and clean up my tongues so that I get a nice fit during assembly. Alright guys, so I'm working on gluing up some of my cabinet doors now. So I'm going to just put a little bit of glue here on my tongue pieces and then a little bit into the ends of my stiles. And then that's all of the glue that I'm going to be adding. This center panel here will sort of just float in the middle. Now this is a sheet of 1/2 inch MDF. As you can see, I rabbeted out a groove here. That way it can easily fit into my grooves. The reason I went with this approach is because now I can just slot that in my groove there. And I don't know if you can see this, but see now I'm flush on my backside here, which I just like the look of this a little bit better. And then it's going to be really nice for like the drawer fronts because then I don't have to worry about filling that gap. When you use 1/4 inch panels in the middle, then you're always going to have a bit of a gap on the backside. That becomes a little bit more tricky with drawer fronts because then you got to kind of fill it for attaching the hardware. So by having it flush on the back, it's just going to make that a little bit easier. Let's just get to work on gluing up all of these cabinet doors. I'll get the glue on there. I'll get them in clamps. I'll make sure they're square. And then I'll show you a trick for how you can sort of hold them together, take them out of clamps, and then work on gluing up another cabinet door. I don't have a ton of these clamps, but I have a ton of cabinet doors. So I'll show you how to sort of work around that. All right, let's get to gluing. are always a lesson in patience. It's like I never have quite enough hands. I'm just gonna get it close. Now I'm gonna flip it over so that the back is facing me. Get it kind of straightened up here. That looks pretty good, just eyeballing it. I will check it for square next. I can get it clamped. I like to go ahead and wipe away any glue squeeze out as well. There's less sanding I have to do later, so that's always good. Now let's make sure it's square. So to do that, we're just gonna measure it diagonally. Then to do the same thing on the other end, and they should be the same. Or pretty darn near close. All right, that looks pretty good. We're nice and square. Okay, perfect. I had to do some minor adjustments there. As long as you're within a 1/16 of an inch, you should be good, but I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I wanted to get it right. So now we're nice and square. So normally I'd have to wait a couple hours until that glue set up, and then I could take this out of clamps and work on gluing up another cabinet door. But I've got a ton of these cabinet doors, and I've only got a couple of these clamps, so I don't got time for that. So I did find another little trick online that I think is going to speed this process up, and that trick is taking a 23 gauge pin nailer, and I've got 1/2 inch nails in here, and I'm just gonna shoot a couple of nails into the section on the back here where that tongue goes into that groove, and that should hold everything together while that glue sets up. Once that glue sets up, this is going to be nice and solid. Those nails will just kind of hold everything in place until then. Now, these are pin nails, so they're very tiny. They leave very small holes, and so it is important though to make sure that you're doing it on the back side of the cabinet door. That way they're going to be a lot less visible. I'll probably still fill any holes if you can see them, but honestly they're pretty small and not noticeable. So I'm gonna add a couple of nails in each of my 4 corners where I've got all of those tongues going into those grooves, and then I'll be able to take this cabinet door out of these clamps and work on gluing up another one. All right guys, if I'm being honest, I can't remember the last thing that I filmed for this video. It's been a couple of weeks since I've picked the camera up. There has been a lot going on in my personal life, a lot of travel this summer, and unfortunately, the Rusty dog got hurt the other week. He actually tore his ACL chasing after a tennis ball. So that means that he's been on activity restriction for the last couple of weeks, and we're thinking it's probably going to require surgery, unfortunately. It's been pretty sad to see him limp around and not be able
able to walk and move around like normal. And since he's on activity restriction, that kind of means that I'm also a little bit on activity restriction because he likes to be wherever I am. If I'm down here working, he wants to be down here with me, and it's just very difficult for him to get up and down stairs. So I haven't been doing as much work down here as I would have liked to have been because of that. But I've been doing a little bit of work behind the scenes. I just haven't felt like picking the camera up. But most of the stuff I've been doing is just kind of the boring stuff that you guys probably didn't want to watch anyways. It's been a lot of sanding, a lot of filling in any imperfections, a lot of priming and painting. I've got all of the face frames for the cabinets fully painted now, so they are ready to get attached to the cabinet. I've got 2 coats of primer on my face frames and then 3 coats of that Sherwin-Williams Emerald Trim Enamel paint. This is in a color called Soft Sage. I think I like the color. I'm not really sure. It was really hard to pick out a paint color. That was probably one of the hardest parts of this build just because there are so many options. I was trying to pick a color that would be kind of neutral but also last and not get outdated in, 5 years from now. I don't know if I made the right call, but I think it is going to look good in this space. What is kind of cool about this color in particular is that it kind of changes hues depending on the lighting or just at different times of the day when I look at it. Sometimes I look at it and it looks green, sage green. Other times I look at it and it's like kind of gray looking. So it's kind of cool that it kind of changes color a little bit. And I think in certain times of the day, certain lightings, it might vary, the look of it might vary a little bit. Anyways, all the face frames are painted now, so I've got that step out of the way. And now I need to work on getting all the cabinet doors painted. Now I've gone ahead and painted the back sides of the cabinet doors. These have, again, 2 coats of primer, 3 coats of that trim enamel paint. Since this is all flat on the back, it was very easy just to roll these. That way when I'm spraying the other side, I don't have to worry about flipping everything over. This paint takes about 4 hours in between coats, so I wanted to be able to speed up the process a little bit. I've still got to prime and paint the other sides of the doors. Now I will be spraying this side because of the shaker style design. It's just much easier to get a better finish spraying this than if I had to take a brush or roller. That would leave a lot of lines behind. I just find with this shaker style, it's much easier to spray if you can. Unfortunately, one of the downsides of not being a professional cabinet shop is that I don't have any sort of professional indoor spray booth for spraying cabinet doors. So that means I have to get a little bit more creative when it comes to spraying paint on this and getting a good quality finish. I decided I did not want to spray these cabinet doors inside because I just didn't want to get overspray all over my shop. I've done that in the past and it's way more of a mess and hassle than I want to deal with. So the plan was to spray these things outdoors. But the problem is it's been like 90 degrees and super humid every single day, and it's been raining like every single day this summer. It's been one of the rainiest summers that I can remember here. That's made it very difficult for painting these cabinet doors outside. The solution I came up with is setting up some sort of DIY spray booth outside using a canopy tent and then taping off the sides. That's what I'm gonna try to do. That's gonna require a lot of work to basically set up this paint booth, and then the downside is I need to probably take it down relatively soon because if you get any sort of wind or anything like that, it'll just blow the tent over. So the goal is to get as much of this booth put together and paint these cabinet doors in a very speedy, well, when I say speedy, we'll say efficient manner so that I can get everything painted, I can get that spray booth taken down, and we can move on to another step of this cabinet build. Just like with any paint projects, 90% of the work is in the prep, so that means that I'm probably gonna spend at least an hour or two setting up this DIY spray booth so that I can spend a few minutes painting these doors. So let's get outside, let's get that tent set up, and let's get to work on setting up some sort of booth so that I can spray and make these cabinet doors look good.
So I won't say that this spray booth setup is perfect. It's not 100% enclosed, but it was enclosed enough that it kept most of the bugs out and it kept the wind from blowing things into the wet paint, which those were the 2 main things that I wanted. I wanted to make sure I left myself some ventilation so I could, breathe, kind of important. Overall, it got the job done, and thankfully Mother Nature blessed me with a couple days of no rain so I could get these doors knocked out.
Had to get some help in the painting department today. Looking good.
Need to bring in professionals.
these cabinet doors, I'm using this little HVLP paint sprayer that I got from Harbor Freight, mainly because it was only $35 and I was just curious to see how it did. Overall, it worked pretty well, but you do have to thin the paint down quite a bit. Alright guys, we got everything primed. Gonna let this dry for a while and I'll probably paint tomorrow. I want to get this good and dry, and then my setup in there was a little bit messy, so I'm gonna have to clean up the backs a little bit as well. Had a feeling I might have to do that. It's all good. I'm really happy with the way that turned out. Hey, that little Harbor Freight paint sprayer got the job done. Alright guys, so I'm ready to go ahead and put my first coat of paint on all of these cabinet doors. Now, I spent a couple of hours today sanding down all of these doors again after I primed them yesterday, and the reason I did that is because I'm using a water-based primer and paint here, and I found that that water that was in that paint was just sort of raising the grain a little bit, especially on those like MDF center panels, and so I wanted to just smooth everything out, so I hit everything with 220 grit, and I usually like to do that anyways between coats of paint and primer just to smooth everything out. I feel like that just gives you the best chance of having the most professional looking paint job. Now, given my setup, my paint job is not going to be perfect, but we are not aiming for perfect here. We are aiming to as close to perfect that is acceptable by most people. Obviously, I have higher standards, but most people will probably look at these and think they look just fine. That's the goal. That's what we're shooting for, and I think we should definitely be able to achieve that today. So I've got this nice, sexy suit on today because I totally ruined my clothes yesterday when I was priming all of these cabinet doors. Luckily, it's not 90 degrees outside again today. Otherwise, I would probably be dying in this thing. I will be using a new airless paint sprayer that I bought from Harbor Freight today. This is the, like I said, first time I've ever used this. It's totally new. I read a few reviews on this thing, and one of the things people seem to say was that it just puts out a lot of paint. So to combat that, I did install a different gray coat tip on it that I'm hoping will just, it's more for like fine finish. So I'm hoping that's going to cut down on the amount of paint that is used or paint that is wasted. This paint here, this emerald pink, it's not cheap, so we want to make sure that all the paint that is leaving this bucket here is actually going onto the cabinet doors and not just in the air. I think I've done everything I need to do to paint these doors, so let's just get in that DIY spray booth and let's lay some paint down on these doors. Sexy, huh?
Alright guys, I just wanted to show you real quick the spray tip that actually comes with this Avanti airless spray gun. It comes with this 515 bit here. As you can see, I still have it in the package because I decided after doing a little bit of research to upgrade to this fine finish bit here. This is a 310 spray tip and this is from Graco, and I've got it in combination with this blue guard here. This spray tip here will actually not fit into the red spray guard that comes with the gun. So if you're going to upgrade and get this fine finish spray tip here, just make sure you get a guard that will fit it. These are both from Graco. I got these off Amazon. I'll leave a link to them. I was really happy with the quality of finish that I got using this spray tip. It sprayed a lot less paint, which was nice for something like cabinet doors, or if you're doing spraying furniture or anything like that. This tip just gives you a little bit of a finer finish, which is more ideal for stuff like that. If you're spraying like walls or something in your house, then this tip is probably sufficient for that. So I'm really happy with this Avanti airless paint sprayer. After this first time use, I will definitely be using this thing again for any sort of cabinet doors or furniture that I have to spray in the future. I've used a lot of HVLP sprayers and I just found that the quality that I got from this gun using this particular spray tip was so much nicer. So overall, really happy. If you're looking to get this airless sprayer from Harbor Freight and you plan on using it for something like furniture or cabinets, then I would highly recommend to spend a little bit of extra money and get this fine finish tip from Graco here, as well as this guard, and I think you'll be really happy with the results. So I've got one coat of paint on all of my cabinet doors. They're looking pretty good, except I'm still fighting. I don't know if it'll show up in the camera, but I used MDF for these center panels here, and like I said, I don't know if it's going to show up in the video, but there's a few areas where you can see just where the moisture from the paint raised the fibers in the MDF, and so they're just a little bit higher. Like I said, I don't know that you can really see it in the camera too well. Maybe you can, maybe I just can't tell from looking at my phone, but here's a good example here. So you can see it's just a little bit raised up there. Here's another one here. So, you know, I'm trying to get the best looking finish that I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and sand this all down again. And then hopefully once I do that, this first coat of paint will have really locked and sealed off that MDF. That way when I put the second coat on, it's not going to absorb as much of that moisture, and hopefully that'll give me a nice smooth finish, but we'll see. Hopefully that's going to fix the issue, but I've really been battling. I've not worked with MDF too much before, so I haven't really dealt with this issue. Hopefully I'm gonna be able to solve this issue.
One of the last steps I needed to tackle for these doors before I could get them installed in the kitchen was to drill out the holes for the cabinet hinges. I like to place my hinges a couple inches from each edge of the door, and then I drill out those holes using a Craig cabinet hinge jig. Now this makes installing hinges pretty easy. You just set it to the correct settings for your style hinges and then clamp it on your mark, and it comes with this Forstner bit that you can attach to your drill that drills the holes to the perfect depth. It even includes 2 drill guide holes for attaching your screws. Now I'm using 1 1/4 inch overlay cabinet hinges here as mentioned earlier, and these are from a company called Revinte. At least I think that's how you say it. I'll leave a link to them. I've used both their drawer slides and cabinet hinges, and I find both to be pretty good quality at an affordable price. Now these particular ones come with like a little anchor piece for the screws, but I just removed those and I use regular 3/4 inch screws for attaching my hinges into my door. Now that these hinges are pre-installed, I can easily get these cabinet doors installed in the kitchen when the time comes.
All right, that is a wrap on those shaker style cabinet doors. I think those doors turned out great, and it's gonna give this kitchen a really classic yet modern look. While this style of door looks really simple, it can be a little tricky getting all of those measurements right. Totally worth it though. I think they turned out awesome. Next up, we're tackling the drawer boxes for these cabinets, and there are a lot of them. I'll show you how to build strong, smooth sliding drawer boxes that fit perfectly with these cabinets. So make sure you're subscribed and following along. We're getting really close to seeing this kitchen come together. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys back here for the next video. Bye.